Johnny, 3 years old, had loved daycare for 2 years. But for the past week, he'd been begging Marla not to take him. She'd consulted the pediatrician, who dismissed it as the terrible threes. However, Marla sensed something was wrong. Marla sat on the floor and coaxed Johnny into her lap. He sobbed, pressing his face against hers. She decided this was more than a tantrum. "Honey," she said gently, "Mommy didn't mean to snap." She rocked him until he stopped crying. "Why don't you like daycare anymore?" Johnny shivered and whispered, "I don't like." Marla asked if the other kids were mean, but Johnny wouldn't answer. "Baby, Mommy needs to go to work, but I'll come and get you early today, okay?" Johnny sat up. "No lunch?" he asked anxiously. Marla frowned. What was happening? Marla dropped Johnny off, promising to fetch him before lunch. He walked into the daycare quietly, but threw Marla a pleading look that broke her heart. She took the afternoon off from work to investigate Johnny's reluctance. She planned to drop in during lunch to see what was going on. At the daycare, the receptionist said the children were having lunch. Marla walked to the dining room and peered in. The kids were eating, each supervised by a teacher or assistant. Marla quickly spotted Johnny with a woman she didn't recognize. The woman picked up Johnny's spoon, scooped up mashed potatoes, and pressed it against his lips. "Eat," she cried. Johnny shook his head, tears running down his cheeks. "Open your mouth and eat," the woman said angrily. Johnny looked distressed. The woman cried, "You will sit here until you clear your plate." Marla saw a small portion of food left on Johnny's plate. Johnny was not a big eater. She never pushed him to eat more than he wanted. Johnny opened his mouth to protest, and the teacher quickly pushed the spoon in. Marla saw Johnny choke and sputter. She'd had enough. She opened the door and stormed in. "Get away from my son!" she cried. The woman looked up, shocked. "Parents aren't allowed in the dining room," she said. "Then they should be," Marla said, controlling her anger. "Can't you see Johnny's had enough? He's healthy but not a big eater. Force-feeding a child is traumatic. Forcing children to clean their plates can lead to obesity and eating disorders. These children have needs and a will of their own. If you don't respect their boundaries, you teach them they don't deserve respect. Is that the message you want to send?" The teacher flushed red and got to her feet. "I never," she began. "That's a pity," Marla said, "because if this happens again, I will ensure you lose your job. I'm not sending my son to daycare to be mistreated." Marla tenderly wiped Johnny's mouth. "Come on, honey," she said. "Mommy promised you a treat this afternoon." Marla had a long talk with Johnny, and there was no tantrum the next morning. Over the next few weeks, she dropped by the daycare at lunchtimes. The teacher never forced Johnny to eat again, and he recovered his good humor and enthusiasm.